welcome to the Brain Development Podcast. And we're here to show parents that there is a pathway to healing your behavioural and learning symptoms of your autistic, dyslexic, ADHD, OCD, Asperger's, dyspraxic, dysgraphic child. And my purpose, along with Vicky, is to help empower parents to understand how they can build their child's brain from the bottom up to invoke change. So today, Vicky, we're going to be talking about an amazing subject based on numbers of research. And I know a lot of the parents that you work with, you see this in results, is autoimmunity and autism. And is there a connection? So,
Yay. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic. And so how we'll sort of how this discussion will go is we'll talk about sort of like understanding what an autoimmune condition is, because maybe a lot of people don't even know what that is. So we'll just briefly sort of summarize what that looks like. And then we'll talk about sort of some of the mechanisms of how, if there is autoimmunity in a parent, how that can then interrupt neural pathways in the child, so that then there is this predisposition to autism. Because we know in a lot of cases, the children are actually, in most cases that I see, the child is typically developing, then there is a regressive event. So we'll talk about how that all sort of catalyzes into the picture that we see. The first thing that I'd like to do first, though, is just to give some perspective on this. And I don't want... The big thing for me always is that there's not a lot of guilt or shame or blame around, parents, because I feel like when we have a child with autism or a difference or a delay or, some behavioural issues that are difficult and tough for us to deal with, we then start sort of looking back on, what did I do wrong? And sort of blaming ourselves. And I feel like that's really, really unhelpful, because we have like this battery of energy to focus on whatever we want to in life. And I feel like if most of it's taken up in the past and blaming ourselves and stressing about what we could have done, it's kind of pointless, because we can't change any of it anyway.
Well, we've both been there, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. And we've both been in that scenario. And so I feel like with your energy battery that you've got, if you can drive it into the present time and focus on actually what you can control, it's a lot more helpful. So I just wanted to say that. So when we go through this and talk about autoimmunity, this isn't specifically saying, because you have an autoimmune condition, you've caused autism in your child. I don't want anybody to think that. But of course, it's helpful for us to know that if we do have an autoimmune condition, and if we are looking to then conceive again, some of the things that we can do to kind of pull back inflammation in ourselves and pull back possibly that condition, so that doesn't catalyze change in our, in future offspring. So in terms of autoimmunity, what is it? Well, it's basically where our immune system gets confused and starts attacking our own cells instead of a pathogen or a disease or a microbe that is disease causing in our body. And some of the pathogens, or the infections, we'll call them just for ease, they are really sinister, and basically they can cross-react with our own proteins because they look really similar. So, and then there's like so many of these, and I find this rife in our children and the adults that I work with who are parents of these children. So if we think about what can happen in utero, so first of all, let's look at that. So if you've got an autoimmune condition, what's essentially happening is your immune system is attacking your own cells instead of attacking the thing, the disease, the infection. That's essentially what's happening. So, okay, well, why does this happen? Well, this can be for a myriad of reasons. Usually it's catalyzed by cellular toxins. So that is kind of where it starts, an inflammation. It can start off with an infection. So it might be herpes, it might be Epstein-Barr, there might be strep. It could be just a really sort of what we feel is like just a basic virus that then our immune system is so overwhelmed by that it ends up kind of confusing the immune system. The immune system kind of mistakes its own proteins for this virus or whatever it is, and then we start attacking our own cells. And that is typically driven by an inflammatory process. So usually there's an underlying predisposition somewhere that might have from anywhere, that might have come from our own parents, or there might be like underlying toxicity. And then there is usually a trigger for that. And it can be stress, another toxin, another kind of infection or something like that. So then, okay, so with if we're pregnant and we have an autoimmune condition, we know that what is happening is our immune system, like I said, is attacking our cells. Also, if we've got auto antibodies, which are essentially the antibodies that are attacking our own cells, and we've got a fetus that we are protecting or we're nurturing in our womb, we know, and this is what the research is telling us now. So it's not definitively saying, oh, if you have an autoimmune condition, you will have a child with autism. The research isn't saying that. It's saying that it's more likely because these auto antibodies will cross the placenta and they can then impact the child's brain, the developing brain. And what's really interesting about this is that I see every child that I test has autoimmunity in the brain. And in a lot of cases, the parents have autoimmunity. And in some parents, they don't even know that they have an autoimmune condition, right? In a lot of the parents as well, they have a lot of viral or bacterial infections that they don't really know that they have. But obviously, from my perspective, because I'm a practitioner and I've done this for a while, I understand the symptoms of what that might be. So if we look at some of the infections and the areas that they can impact, think about things like herpes. So a lot of people have herpes, and lots of the parents I work with have herpes, but it's like, oh, this is not really a sinister condition. Nobody really looks at sort of what's happening. But what herpes can do, and all of the viral and bacterial things can do this, is they can cross-react and mimic specific proteins in our body, and that's obviously what autoimmunity is. But if we look at some of those, so for an example, so say somebody has herpes, that virus, the antibodies that we produce to that, the virus can sort of cross-react or have molecular mimicry with the GABA and NMDA receptors of a brain. So, and probably nobody knows what I'm talking about unless you're a practitioner. But basically, and it's like, what does it even mean? Like, why are you even talking like this?
Talking about?
But GABA is so essential for inhibition and like sensory integration and like just feeling calm in your body. And every child with autism has too much glutamate. So the NMDA receptor regulates glutamate and GABA. So if you've got antibodies attacking that area, this child is going to be very heightened. Like, they won't have any inhibitory processes. They won't be able to regulate their senses very well. They're going to be very heightened all of the time. There could be speech delay. There'll be sleep issues, because from a sort of immune system standpoint, even from like before in utero, this parent's immune system or these autoantibodies might have transferred across the placenta and started attacking that brain region before this person's even born. So you might find that, and in some cases this is going to be stark, so there might be delays from birth, but really this is like a predisposition that's laid. So because, as I was saying at the start, typically what we're finding is that the child is typically developing to an extent. Like, if you really look back, you're like, there were a few little signs, and Lara, you know more about this, where they're like, the child might not have rolled over, they might have been late walking, they might have walked too early. Like, there might be some sort of clue from your perspective developmentally where
they also
you can
start
sort of
talking, don't they? They start talking, but then something happens.
Yeah. And this is the thing to know, is that if you've got this underlying sort of immune, because obviously we inherit our parents' immune system and the immune sort of like framework that our parents have given to us. So if that's in a chronic overactive state, we will inherit that also. Or, I say we, like I'm an autistic child, but I feel like I probably would have been diagnosed if I was a child now. But back, because I was, I did have sort of quite a lot of symptoms when I was a child, but, I've healed. But anyway, so we inherit that immune sort of blueprint as well. So our immune system from our parents with this autoimmune condition. So bear in mind, those antibodies may have crossed the placenta. So they're there, and we have those, and they're impacting areas of the brain. And then if you think, say, the child might have inherited remnants of a virus that might have been laying dormant. And so there's all this sort of predisposition just there sort of underlying. There could be other things as well, which we'll discuss in a minute, about like why, because obviously if there's autoimmune in the parent, there's massive inflammation, because the two go hand in hand. You can't have an autoimmune condition without huge inflammation. So we know then that is there as well, which obviously oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, all of those things that the child has sort of come into the world with, that's been inherited by that parent with an autoimmune condition, and then something happens. And this, I know this because I've worked with hundreds of people, and so have you. It's like the child is sort of okay, they're ticking along, and then something happens, or a few things happen, and then we have this regressive event, and then the child kind of like regresses into autism, or they lose skills, or they stop talking, or they become aggressive. And that is exactly what happened with our picture and so many of the kids I see. And what we're trying to sort of think about is, because we're always like, okay, and there is epigenetic change. So we know that if there's a huge insult, it can kind of impact like how your DNA is expressed. So we know that. But also it's like, just from a really simplistic viewpoint, if we think about the catalyst, it could just be something as simple as like an infection. It could just be a viral infection that has sort of almost reactivated this kind of autoimmune picture that was already kind of like that we were predisposed to, like in utero. And then I find that a lot. And as I'm going through as well, the more neural zoomers I do, there's always viral there. There's Epstein-Barr, there's herpes, there's strep. And if you think about like some of those other infections and like the havoc that they can play. So Epstein-Barr, for an example, I spoke about herpes and it impacting that really important regulation of kind of the inhibitory pathways in the brain. Epstein-Barr will cross-react with myelin. And myelin, for anybody that doesn't know what that is, if you imagine your brain cells and like the like your neurons, like the sort of like the synapses between them, they have to like send like chemical messengers for us to be able to kind of like do what I'm doing now, basically, and just talk and function on my brain to be able to think and have thoughts. The myelin sheathing is like an insulating sort of, you know, like in wires where there's like that sheathing that insulates the electric impulses. That's what myelin does. So if you've got antibodies that are attacking that, it's going to slow those pathways. So again, those signaling that for speech and for thinking and cognition and learning will be slowed. And then one huge sort of area that lots of people probably, if you've been on the journey a while, know about is strep. So if you've had strep, and a lot of the cases that I see will be that the parent has this autoimmune picture and then they develop strep, and they can develop that in pregnancy or just about to give birth. And we know with strep, especially if there's an autoimmune picture and we know the immune system's misdirected anyway, strep will impact the dopamine receptors in the basal ganglia. Well, we know that is going to cause OCD, tics, repetitive behaviour. Like that's the dopamine like signalling area. So it's, and I mean, you know, lots about that area as well because that's huge in the work you do. But so we know then all of those things, and then there's other ones. I mean, there's the Coxsackie virus, which is that can impact the pancreas and like how we regulate insulin. So that can be hugely sort of significant in terms of like how our kids are kind of stabilised in terms of how they can take in fuel from food. And all these things are sort of, you know, these are things that like we wouldn't think would be that sinister, but it's like how they can cross-react in the body and brain. And so I think when we're looking at this research, and when you sent me all of those papers, because I love the science. So I was just like, a Death Eater, like sucking in all the info, and I loved it. And I think it's just important for people to know that we're not saying that autoimmunity definitively causes autism, but we know that if your immune system is misdirected and you have antibodies, which you will have because you have autoimmune, they can cross the placenta and impact that child, and they can impact the brain of that child, which again, as I say, just to summarise, is that you're sort of then laying a foundation of autoimmunity, which can be triggered at any point for our kids. And we know with autistic children that like autoimmunity is part of the picture. And the reason I say that, and that's not even from a research paper, that is from anecdotal experience of running labs daily and seeing it every single time on the lab work.
But you can't question that. You know, if you're seeing it, you can't question it. There might not be a paper out there that's done, you know, a group of people that have it, a group of people that don't have it, and then they've done a test and they've done a whole very expensive lab test around all these two different groups of people, and then they've written a paper on it. Who cares?
Yeah, I
Seeing it
agree.
day in, day out, there is significant evidence there. It's a shame there isn't, or I haven't seen it, but the absolute link hasn't been proven. But if you're seeing it day in, day out, what's to say it's not true? And I think it comes down to just evidence-based data, which is you're seeing it in practice that there is a link. There is substantial link between autoimmunity and autism, but everybody, every case is individual. And I think that's what, people need to take from it. You can't put a blanket on everyone. You need to look at yourself individually with your own child and understand the picture, and then take the action in order to correct it. And I think that's the exciting journey that we're on in terms of helping families to go down that pathway, no matter how long it might take. Some parents get it really fast. Other parents take time because there's layers and layers and layers that we have to go through. However, there is hope, there is opportunity to change, and we are seeing great results. And I think that's what is exciting for us when we're going out and trying to educate parents out there who feel that there is nothing more that they can do. And there really is. There's so much. And when it comes to, I think you've got the autoimmunity, but then you've got the nutrition or lack of, and the food systems that we're in at the moment. And we have, a poor quality food system with lack of minerals and vitamins in lots of our food, that where it should be. And then we're eating lots of packet food. And we talk about this all the time. Stay on the outside of the aisles. Don't go in the inner parts of, it's all packet food. But, it's just layers and layers and layers of it that we're working through. And the education for how and what you should be feeding your child is also very personalized and bespoke. So, we get to that point where blueberries might not be the thing for every child. And we talk about this all the time. Because, and there are certain other foods, plantain, and we talked about okra yesterday, and we talked about lots of different foods are very, excitatory for those specific children. However, it is a very personalized journey that you need to go on. And autoimmunity could be the foundation of where you start when you start unpeeling those layers so that you know what to do and how to correct it.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that this is why I think that we see, there's so much research around gluten and how it's not helpful for autistic children for so many reasons. But just from a new perspective on this, I think this is a huge driver of that as well. And this is one of the reasons why I think you see such profound results with autistic kids when you take gluten out, because gluten will trigger it, it actually inhibits so much when it comes to autoimmunity. You think it triggers zonulin, which will exacerbate leaky gut. And we know leaky gut is always there in autoimmunity, because if you've got a leaky gut, you've got a leaky brain. And it's kind of like this whole picture of get the autoantibodies can then get into the brain where they're not meant to be. And then it suppresses the thyroid as well. And the thyroid is always implicated in autoimmune, because you think about, it's like a systems. When you get to that autoimmune picture, it's so many systems have collapsed before that, and this could be, however many layers of this might be generational, but there's a collapse of systems that lead to this. And then there's different nutrient deficiencies as well. And I don't know whether we have time, but there's specific things that I would basic things that you can do if you have an autoimmune condition now, or your child is autistic, that you can do that would be helpful, And so the first thing I would always do if you have an autoimmune condition is get gluten out of your diet. It is it's kryptonite for you. But there are other foods that people might not be aware of. I read research which was talking about spirulina and how it can impact some of the process in autoimmunity. And lots of people will take that thinking it's really healthy, but actually that can have an adverse impact on autoimmune. And then what some people don't know, what a lot of people don't know, is that, do you remember that, Michael Caine? And I remember there's is yeast as well, like candida. If you have chronic fungal infections, it impacts interleukin 6, and then that raises cortisol. And we know that, like, so fungus can just penetrate the gut lining anyway, but that can, so basically the whole fungal picture, the way that it impacts this interleukin in your immune system can trigger autoimmune. So it's like if you've got chronic fungal infections, sort them out. And even if you have to go to the doctor and get itraconazole and get an antifungal, if you want to go the allopathic route, get the fungus out of your body. Yeah. I mean, there's a load of natural ways of doing that. But, you know, like, that's another big thing that I find always and the inflammation. So if you know, like, if you're smoking, you're eating loads of fried food and you're eating junk every day and loads of processed stuff, you're drinking no water, like, that's all going to lead to, like, cellular inflammation and, like, not being able to release what the cells need to and get in what it needs to. And then one big thing I always see in autoimmune is a massive lack of vitamin D. It's so low. It's like, I have a lady at the minute, her vitamin D's at 5, and the doctor put her on 5 medications for autoimmune conditions, which keep coming. And it's like, the doctors have got this lab and it shows vitamin D of 5, and it's like, if you sorted that out, because a lot of hers was like, there was like an insulin picture, obviously, because your vitamin D regulates your insulin. I find that often in our kids.
What should it be?
So if there is an autoimmune condition, it should be over 100.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, what the actual F? Like, what is going on? Yeah, I'm like, so, and in the UK, I think it's like, if it's over 20, we're not deficient. It should be over like 50 to 70 as like a baseline. But if you've got autoimmune as an adult, you can go to like 100, it should be like 130. You know, like, it should be way over 100, because you need that as an anti-inflammatory, because it's, and you, like, every cell in your body has a vitamin D receptor. So if you're not getting vitamin D, like, you think in the UK especially, we have no light. I mean, we do at the minute, and it's great. But, you know, for half the year, it's dark, isn't it? And, like, no one goes out and stuff. And so, and you can probably talk more about how you can get the light in the winter, like, in terms of, like, the lights and stuff, because I know you, like, that's more your field. But yeah, I mean, like, that is so important. So all through the winter, like, everyone should be supplementing with vitamin D. And, you know, I mean, I supplement with it all the year round. But because the other thing to know is that there can be, like, genetic predispositions for this. So, like, me and my daughter have a genetic mutation, which means that we don't metabolize vitamin D from the sun very well. So even if we're sitting out there, like, all day, like, it's very hard for us to metabolize it in our skin. So there's, like, lots of those different areas as well. But I think obviously, like, you know, if you already have a child with, like, neurodiversity, there's so much that can be done. And I think autoimmunity is looked at as this permanent, it's like autism, isn't it? We look at it, these are chronic, permanent conditions that nothing can be done to help. But autoimmunity can be reversed. It's like, there's so much that can be done if we know what to do. And there's a therapy that I use, actually, and I should probably speak about that. I've started to use something called microimmunotherapy, and I use that with, like, all of the kids I work with now who have this autoimmune picture, which is all of them. And basically it stops the viruses, like, transcribing, basically. It stops the transcription of the virus. Yes, so good. And then it can, it's like homeopathy, so it's very low dose. So if you think about what you would typically do for an autoimmune condition from an allopathic perspective, you'd put in steroids to suppress immunity further, and you'd put in, like, antibiotics to kill off the thing. Well, like, antibiotics are going to trigger more zonulin and increase gut permeability even more. And then you're just suppressing immunity. So you're allowing things like yeast and fungus to kind of take hold even more.
You're just adding more mold and micro. It's all fungus, isn't it? Antibiotics is literally just fungus and mushrooms and mold. That's all you're putting in you, and you're just creating a nice environment for that overgrowth.
Yeah, and it's just, and this is the thing, and I just, like, there's just so much that can be done for, you know. And then there's herbs as well. So there's different herbs. I'll quickly tell you some of the herbs that I use. So I use microimmunotherapy, but there are specific herbs that modulate the immune system that are really nice, and some of them have got really wacky freaking names, and it's crazy, but I've got my list. So some of the herbs that I like to use for kids, I like boswellia. Mm-hmm. I like ginger. I like Chinese thunder god vine.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I want some.
I know, it's so powerful, but like these regulate and modulate the immune system, because what we don't want, because you might think about putting in something, I'm just thinking about other things that you would, sometimes you'll get herbs that will excite the immune system, but if you're already in this state, and I'm just trying to think of what they are, and I can't, my brain's gone, but there's a couple that you'll see often in like protocols and or like, you know, herbal combinations that are unhelpful, and I could probably link what they are, but you don't want to sort of, what we don't want is to excite or
Again,
yeah, so we want stuff that actually like modulates the immune system and brings it back into balance. And then another thing that I really like is, because we know that fish oil is really good for the immune system, but most kids can't tolerate it because it's really high in histamine. And obviously, if they've got this autoimmune picture, there's usually a mast cell activation. So something I use that's really nice, there's two things actually. One is called plasmalogens, and I love them, and I've been getting really good results with them with kids. And the other one is SPMs. So basically what SPMs do, they're a type of fish oil. And what they do is they sort of mediate the immune system so that it becomes unstuck. So like they're really helpful as well. But I can link all of these. I can't remember the brand that I'll have to find it. But
send them over, put them in the notes.
Yeah. So they're really good as well. But all of those things, they help to modulate the immune system rather than like suppressing or like exciting the immune system. So yeah, and I think if anybody is like, oh, have I got an autoimmune condition? You can go to your, or, you know, if you want to look at this and you don't want to spend out on other lab testing, you can go to your GP and you can ask for ANA and CRP. And CRP should usually be under 5. And if there are autonuclear antibodies, ANA, if that's elevated, that is a sign that there is an autoimmune condition there. Because CRPs are like a signifier of inflammation, so it should be under 5, and if it's over that, then that is a signifier that there's an autoimmune condition. Because so many people have one, they don't even know. They don't even know they have autoimmunity.
Scary. Well, it's awful because, you know, as you go into menopause as a woman, you then start to really suffer. So, you know, that's when it really does kick in, I think, for most people. So therefore, you know, best to find out beforehand and correct it.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I mean, there's like loads of layers that we could sort of, I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast on this, but, you know, even things like stress and insulin regulation, if those are not regulated, and if there's a hormonal event, which obviously there will be, like inevitably, then that can trigger autoimmune as well. If those are not in place, you know, if you're highly stressed and your insulin is all over the place, because your insulin, if it's high, will just suppress your thyroid. And we know that that's part of autoimmunity. So yeah, there's like so many layers to this. But I think the important thing to know is that there's always something that like the body is so fascinating and intricate and clever, and it wants to be well. It's never you know, because when we look at autoimmunity, we might look at that and go, why the hell why the hell would our body do that to us? Like, why would my immune system attack me? But it's not, our body's never working against us, even though it feels like that in this condition. It's just that it's got confused because we've overloaded our body with so much inflammation that our body can't almost like, it doesn't have the capacity to sort of do what it's supposed to do. In the right environment, our body will always thrive. Always, because it's clever and it's intuitive and it wants to be well. It's never, you know, it's not there. We wouldn't survive, would we, as a population? It would be ridiculous if like our body was working against us deliberately. But
so I got a question for you. So
yeah,
you know, we call this the last question, but it'd probably be a long answer. So you've been working with many children. You've identified there are autoimmune underlying conditions within, you know, a specific child. And then you've gone on a journey with that child. And you see this across everyone, because I know you do. But what have you seen to give parents hope of, so what do you actually see? You might be able to identify, you could do a bunch of labs, you can tell me what's wrong, what do you do about it? How do you see the change? Not about what you do about it, because you've given a few, you know, snippets, and there's more to it. I know that. But what have you seen in terms of changes with a child? Like, think of a child.
There's so many, but I mean, really, when you can bring the immune system back into what it's supposed to do, it's just life changing. Like I can't. I mean, it's like you've got a child that has gone from, because you imagine as well, like the brain's on fire because the immune system is attacking the brain, and actually, what I see, there's a few things that correlate with the severity of the symptoms I see, but the larger amount of autoimmune, the more stark the symptoms are, and that might not be a profoundly disabled child in as much as functionality. It might be aggression, and I've seen kids who are, I mean, they are on fire. Like there's no demand can be put on that child. Like to the point where if you say, "Hey, how are you this morning?" they're like punching their mum in the face. Do you know? Like there's literally their nervous system
kids
can't.
shouldn't do that. You
No,
know,
I know.
It's not their fault.
No, it isn't. And you know, I speak to so many parents where, and it's so sad because I remember this with Rose. And just to touch on that from our perspective is that we had this where there was lots of genetic predisposition and there's autoimmune in my family, and then her birth was horrifying, and then we got to a point and then she developed impetigo. And that's when it was like, whoa, this is like a new thing, because she was already delayed and there was a lot of kind of like, there were symptoms, but when that happened it was like she was on fire, and it was like the aggression. She would smash her head on the floor. I mean, like concrete. And you think to yourself, imagine a body, because our body's clever. Imagine a body that's so upset. It's actually really horrible to, talk about. And I know lots of people will resonate, and that's why it's important to talk about these topics openly. Imagine a body that does that. Imagine that your brain is so inflamed that you are driven to hit your head repeatedly on a that is not logically, think about survival of the fittest and evolution. We weren't evolved to smash our head on the floor. It's like it's going to damage our brain. But obviously they're so inflamed, and I see that a lot where a child is so inflamed, and it's almost like the noise in the brain is so much, and it's pain as well. And it's like it's so much, and then so first of all, I go through a process always of like the dietary first, and we get that really optimized. And then I do deal with gut first, because of course with the gut, we know that there's leaky gut, which is obviously going to inevitably leading to leaky brain. So we deal with that. And then when you regulate the immune system, I can think of two cases. I mean, Rose is an example, but there's one little boy specifically I'm thinking of right now. There's many like this, but he would punch holes in the walls, like he would, I mean, literally, and he had strep. And the thing is, we didn't even test for that, but it was like he had all the symptoms, and we couldn't do bloods because he was that, there's no way that child's doing bloods. And he would hurt all of his siblings and everything else. And he had a helmet where he was so profound, and he's in a mainstream school now.
I love that.
And honestly, she sends me...
Honestly, I've got goosebumps.
I know. And she sends me videos. I mean, we worked intricately for 3 years.
Yeah,
it was long. Yeah, and it was hard work. But she sends me videos, and he's like, and he's writing. I'm like, because we didn't know he could do this stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, because obviously when you have a child that's...
He's ready to learn.
Yeah, but it's like, and he's academically really good. And we were
of course. They're so smart.
But
so smart.
Yeah, but some of them, I mean, it depends on the level, like we don't know. But because at that point we had this profoundly disabled person that was, all they could do was to hit their head on the floor, and he had to wear a helmet because it was, and it was so aggressive because he was on fire, because the strep in his body was, and we did, like I say, we went through a lot, but that child was so dysregulated that taking blood from him, I mean, he would have just probably taken because the adrenaline, he was so strong at that point as well. He probably would have ended up hacking the phlebotomist sides out with the it's not funny, but I mean, we can laugh about it now because obviously he's in a lovely place. But yeah, it was like, there's so many like that where, and don't get me wrong, like there's still a magic to the child. And of course, like if you met this child, like, and this is what I want to say to people, because I think there's this expectation. We see a lot on social media about a child that's gone from this profound disability to, or people are implying that this child's gone from profoundly disabled to this like, hey guys, remember that? And like, they're just like, but it takes a lot of time to get to that point where, and you were telling me about Archie the other day, where he's gone into the shop and gone, hi everyone, how's your day? And like, and and how long did that take? A long time.
Yeah.
And and you've got Rose who's going up and being like, hey, you all right guys? Do you want to like hang out? And all these things that our kids can now do that we never dreamed possible. We never thought for a minute
it would be where I am now at certain points.
Yeah.
But you have to believe.
Yeah.
You have to believe, and you go on the journey. And if you know now, or you think it could take 3 years, be prepared, right? It might not. It might take 18 months to get your child from A to B, and then you're happy. I was never happy. My husband always used to say, what are you doing with him now? And I was like, how far can I get him? How far? If I do this, if I do this thing next, or I take him to, this point, how far could I take him next if I did more? And that's what drives parents, because the parents that have these children are gifted themselves. I truly believe that.
Oh,
and
totally.
they have they're
a different brain.
Children. And they are sent these children for a reason, because they have the determination in them to help them, but they don't know it at certain points in this journey, and it is hard. But when you get the results, little results, you want more, and you will keep going on the journey until you are happy with where your child is. And I think that's what the journey is for parents. And that child is sent to you for a reason to help them. And I've got this, very deep spiritual side to me around this, because I've been on that journey myself. And he was sent to me so that I could do this. So I can help other people.
But not just that, like from a health perspective, like I always say, Rose saved me, and it doesn't feel like that. And if you're listening and you're just starting out, like, I get it. Like, you're looking and going, oh, it's easy for you to sit there now on your soapbox because you're 8 years in and your child's okay. But we were where you were at one point, and we get the desperation. But it's like, when you get to this point, you can then go, oh my goodness, like, all my family have autoimmunity. I don't. And why is that? I would have that condition, of course, because all of my genetics tells me I should have that. By rights, it's a predisposition and all my siblings have, and my parents had, and it runs in my family. And I'm not saying that means that it has to be my truth, because it doesn't. But that's because my lifestyle's different, and I'm the only one. And my lifestyle wouldn't be different if I wasn't gifted with a child that showed me the true way to live. And showed me how life was meant to be. Yeah.
About eating and nutrition and you and your brain and your health and your longevity of your body as well. Yeah. I didn't think about it from that side, because we gave up gluten and dairy. We literally went cold turkey and did exactly that. And it helped us no end. It took a few months to get off the latte, but most of the time for that, first few months, I was, definitely gluten-free, and then I came off the milk. Best thing I ever did. Horrific stuff. Horrific.
Same.
Yeah.
And my health has never been better. I mean, I'm 44 this year, and I'm energized. I can run around with my kids, and I'm the first one out in the garden with them and running. And you look at other people of your age, and they seem older because they seem a bit more sluggish, in their bodies, and they don't have the energy and stuff like that. And you think, wow, like, Rose has shown me this. Rose has taught me all this stuff. And like you say, I do think that when you're going through this, like, you have a special sort of brain. Yeah. Like, to go through it. And but even if you don't, that's what people are here for, that will guide you. And even if you don't work with us necessarily, like, you'll find your person. And I think that's one important thing to say, is that, even if it's not working with me or with you, that when you get that resonation around somebody and feel that connection, never resist it.
Yeah.
Like, if you find your person, do that. And if you're like, oh, but this person's more expensive, so that must mean they're like better, or go with what you have to go with your gut feel. You've got to listen. Yeah, you've got to listen to your heart, because you need to find the team to help you, and put that right team around your child and you,
because you need that support at certain points in time. You can make a decision to go with a practitioner, but you also need that support too. So you need to find the right person that supports you, because it's a journey, and sometimes you're at a point in the journey where you're like, is this working? I used to question myself all the time. Is it working? Am I doing the right things? Is there something else I should be doing? And actually, a lot of the time, you've got to go with your gut feel and go, actually, no, give it time. Give it time, give it time. And then over that period of time, if you don't see the change, because you should be seeing step change all the time. And if you're not and you plateau, stop. That's my only advice on different therapies. So
I think as well, though, like, there is a logical order to healing, and I feel like if you are frenetic and you're like, oh, I've seen this therapy, oh, I've seen this supplement, oh, I've seen this, and actually what I find is that the most expensive invasive things are typically not that helpful.
No, I see
Actually
parents
getting
like
the
that
foundations, me too, because you're desperate, and I get it.
Or I see parents that have done all of that, and then I see them. That's what usually happens, that they have done so much previously. But, as we've talked about with Janelle on one of the other podcasts, there are certain times for certain therapies, and you've got to stick to the pathway to healing. And, there's so much that we can talk about for so long. But today we're going to call it a day. And, this was so informative. I hope everybody who's listening, all of our listeners have loved listening to Vicky talk over and through all of the symptoms, as well as the pathway to understanding if you have that autoimmunity underlying condition and what little things you can do. But if you do want to reach out and have a discussion with Vicky at Happy Healthy Unicorn, then do so, because there is so much that you can be doing, and we're here to help you on that healing journey. Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege as always. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.